First of all, a very good morning to you, all of you, ladies and gentlemen, and hats off to TIA, Jose, and his brilliant team of officers for having gathered together this very powerful group of people from the technology world and from the finance world, and I can see a lot of entrepreneurs and industry representatives from the rest of the world as well. Welcome to this event. I'm here to very briefly tell you about the platform called the International Financial Services Center, which has been set up in the western state of Gujarat, in the city of Gandhinagar. So before that, let me very briefly outline the vision behind setting up such a platform. The last 35 years have been very important for India. I mean, since 1991, a lot of reforms have dotted the landscape. The liberalization of the economy took place. The government ceded territory to the private sector for manufacturing, for infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So the focus was on how the government could support and facilitate investment rather than being the sole provider of infrastructure and investment and goods and services, etc. So over the last 35 years, the foreign direct investment policy has evolved, I think, to the extent that today it is almost 100% open. Similarly, I think if you look at the industrial licensing and industrial investment policies, they also have become pretty open by now, I think, with a lot of sectors being deregulated, by regulations being simplified, and so on and so forth. Over the last 10 years, very significant structural reforms also have happened. Let me mention a few of them. One is the goods and services tax. India used to have 25 flavors of value-added taxes in every province. So taking a truck of goods from one end of the country to another end of the country was a nightmare, with having to cross 10 provinces, different checkposts, different forms, and so on and so forth. So in 2016, the government, in consultation with all the state governments, enacted the goods and services tax. So today we have a completely one nation, one tax framework with an electronic platform to support this whole process. Just a couple of months back, the Honorable Finance Minister also announced further simplification of the GST framework, with the reduction of the number of taxes, number of slabs, making rules and simpler for the businessmen. This is a real game changer. I mean, in fact, while the environment became simpler, it also has resulted in a greater amount of tax collection for both the states and the center. If you look at the other set of structural reforms, the other most important reform which I can think of is the cleaning up of the financial sector. The banks were actually weighed down by a lot of bad debts because of the lack of corporate discipline and so on and so forth. So in 2016, the government brought the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, which actually resulted in corporate sector becoming very disciplined. Now people do not go to the banks unnecessarily to borrow, and even if they borrow, they pay up their loans on time. So the financial institutions have turned healthy over the last 8-9 years, with all the public sector banks becoming profitable. They have been consolidated from about 28 banks to about 14 banks now, and so on and so forth. Similar is the case of the insurance companies as well. The last 8-9 years have also seen simplification of the capital markets as well. I think the rules have become simpler. The retail participation has multiplied several fold, thanks to the digital public infrastructure in the form of UPI and national Aadhaar identity called the Aadhaar, and of course the mobile phone. So in 2014, you had about 20 million trading accounts in the stock markets. Today, we have 120 million trading accounts in the stock market. So we will expect that this number will go up sharply over the next 5 to 10 years. The last important reform, which I think is relevant, there are many other reforms which the government of India has done, but the most important reform from an economic perspective is the financial inclusion reform. Because any country grows, provided the bottom of the pyramid also grows along with the top. I mean, it's not a question of how, sometimes what happens, development results in the pyramid becoming taller, the rich becoming richer, and so on and so forth, leaving the poor behind. So in the last 8-9 years, the government did a very important thing from a global perspective. 540 million people without bank accounts were provided with bank accounts under the Jan Dhan Yojana. And these are connected to the national digital ID and the mobile phone. So as a consequence, I think many of them have started paying using these bank accounts. They have started investing into stock markets. They have started getting credit from the formal financial ecosystem, that is the banks. They also will start insuring themselves, pensioning themselves, etc. So the size of the formal financial ecosystem is likely to become bigger and bigger over the course of time. With all this in progress, the Honorable Prime Minister of India has announced a thought process called the Vikasit Bharat at 2047, which means India proposes to become a developed country by 2047. There are very, very important pillars in this. I think one of them is a reform pillar. The reform agenda is unfinished. There is a lot of work going on. Every ministry is now trying to replace old colonial era laws, which are probably 50 and 100 years old, with modern business-friendly laws. I used to be the permanent secretary in the Department of Telecommunications till 2023. We had a law called the Indian Telegraph Act of 1885, which used to guide our telecom sector, and we used to auction billions of dollars of spectrum using this law. The act, by the way, did not have a word called spectrum. So in 2022, we brought a new bill, and the government introduced it in Parliament, and today we have the Telecom Act of 2023. Every ministry in the government of India is replacing. In fact, just Parliament session, we saw all the shipping laws getting replaced. The Coastal Shipping Act, the Merchant Shipping Act, all have been replaced with modern laws which are technology positive, which are business friendly, and which are simpler, a lot simpler and more aligned to international practice. So I will say that the reform process will continue over the next couple of years. And all these modern laws will give you a new boost in terms of simpler regulations, simpler and higher ease of doing business, and so on and so forth. The second pillar of 2047 agenda is the investment pillar. The government has launched 21 plus production-linked incentive schemes for various kinds of manufacturing sectors, which include semiconductors, defense manufacturing, battery, solar PV, and so on and so forth. On top of that, I think the government is investing heavily in the infrastructure sector. This year, the Honorable Finance Minister has put on the table $130 billion for capital expenditure. Last year, it was $120 billion. So this number is likely to go up every year. So the new philosophy of the government has been to put in place infrastructure, construct infrastructure by itself, and then turn it over to the manufacturing sector, turning it over to the private sector for operation, maintenance, and expansion. In the last 3 years, since 2022, about $62 billion worth of assets, which include gas pipelines, transmission lines, ports, airports, etc., have been handed over to the private sector. In the next 5 years, the finance minister set a target of about $120 billion for monetization of infrastructure assets. So while all this is going on, the government of India India will continue to reform. There was a lot of impatience in regard to how fast we can reform and align with ourselves to the rest of the world. So the Honorable Prime Minister gave the idea of setting up a platform, an offshore platform, which instantly aligns with the rest of the world. So this gave the idea of the International Financial Center in the city of Gandhinagar. It's called GIFT City. So we are about 5 years old, it's set up in 2019 by an act of Parliament. Today, over the last 5 years, we have notified about 35 regulations, which cover banking, insurance, the capital markets, aircraft leasing, ship leasing, the bullion markets, and so on and so forth. Today, we have about 35 banks. The assets under management have crossed about $100 billion, with about $65 billion of credit outstanding at this point of time. We have 2 international exchanges with trade liquid derivatives, which are basically stock index futures of Indian market. And they do about $100 billion plus of turnover every month. And we have an active bond market which are hosted by these exchanges. The total bond outstandings is about $65 billion at this point of time, out of which about $15 billion is green, social, and sustainable. One of the International Financial Center's agenda is to actually support the green and sustainable market. We have a green loan framework which directs all the banks to lend about 5% of their portfolio to green. About $3.5 billion of loans have been extended by these 35 banks. Out of the $65 billion of issued bonds, about $15.7 billion relate to green, social, sustainable, and sustainable linked bonds. Recently, we have also issued a transition bond framework which supports the hard-to-abate sectors as well. Now, with the very large green program of the Government of India, which includes this 500 gigawatt target which Gaurav mentioned, and things like the hydrogen mission, which target of about 5 million tons per annum by 2030, and a lot of production in the manufacturing sector on green renewable technologies, we will see a significant amount of requirement of capital. And IFSCA will be the backbone on which I think the government will, the entire corporate world in India would rely on, besides the domestic market. The domestic market indeed very hot, because the IPO market is really hot with last year 327 issuances covering about $19 billion. So, but still, India will have to raise its investment goal, I mean, from about, say, about 32% of the GDP to about, say, about 40%. And our savings rate is about 30%, so which means there will be an investment gap which needs to be filled by foreign direct investment. So IFSCA will be a platform for raising of all these investments. We have an active fund industry for equity and hybrid instruments as well. There are about 300 alternative investment funds, venture capital funds, private equity, hedge and debt funds registered with us. They have actually a commitment of nearly about $22 billion, and they have invested about $11 billion into India as well. So IFSCA is an agile fifth financial sector regulator in India. We have our ears to the ground. We are very happy to interact with the corporate world. If I may end by saying that what have we done in the last 5 years? We have brought the global corporate financial marketplace to the doorstep. Today, you don't have to go to Luxembourg or London to issue a bond or to raise $1 billion in credit. You can come to GIFT City, I think. Thank you very much, and look forward to active interaction. Jai Hind.